28 years later is still terrifying audiences in theaters everywhere, as the third installment in the franchise started by director Danny Boyle in 2002, and the first in a new trilogy helmed by him and writer Alex Garland. Something that has bothered the more annoying fans, however, is that there is a huge gap between the titles in the franchise. It all begins with 28 Days Later, and then comes 2007's 28 Weeks Later. But there is no 28 Months Later, with the franchise skipping straight to 28 years later in 2025. There's obviously a huge gap between the releases of Weeks and Years too, with 18 years having passed between them. So what happened? Did the rage virus die down so quickly? Not really. This gap is actually because, between 2007 and 2025, Boyle and Garland didn't collaborate on a single project. They weren't even directly involved in the making of 28 Weeks Later, really, because they were already engaged in another project, the 2007 Cillian Murphy-led sci-fi Sunshine. This would prove to be their last collaboration in 18 years, as there was a notorious falling out between them during production. It has become a genre cult classic over the years, but its ending has divided fans into a kind of love it or hate it situation. The ending itself is the product of Boyle and Garland's disagreement, although they made up soon after. Sunshine was ahead of its time in many respects, basically ushering in an era of scientifically accurate science fiction movies. The science of it was far from perfect, but there was indeed a concern with making logical sense with the scientific aspect of things within the movie. The amount of food and oxygen, close and direct contact with sunlight, factoring in a celestial body's gravitational pull, etc. Our sun dying isn't an immediate possibility, of course, but, as a premise, it does evoke a layer of philosophical and moral issues that is really at the core of the story. As the Icarus II crew strives to launch their nuclear payload onto our star and reignite it. The morality of it is what ultimately made Boyle and Garland take opposite sides. In a recent GQ interview, Garland talked about his position, claiming that, for him, Sunshine is about whether it's morally all right to save the planet right now, only to push the burden of extinction onto future generations. The reflection he wanted to make is that, in the movie, a successful mission doesn't stop the apocalypse, but only delays it, imposing a horrific end on people decades later. And it wouldn't be fair because you are going to reach the same point, which is the heat death of the universe, as he says. We should take that horror ourselves, and not hand it on, as it were, to our great-great-great-great-grandchildren. It may sound silly, but there is some merit to his point. After all, there are people nowadays pondering the morality of having children in the middle of an urgent climate crisis, right? Boyle had a brighter and more optimistic take, in which a solution to the problem is eventually found and humanity ultimately prevails, avoiding extinction for good. Danny was like, "No, we'll find a way." I was saying, "We're not going to find a way." This philosophical disagreement then evolved to comprise other aspects of Sunshine, like the very notion of a closed ending, with Boyle being in favor of it, while Garland wanted to leave space for the audience to interpret the movie. Boyle was also concerned with world-building and establishing a clear setting for the movie, including a prologue to explain the context. Garland, however, was adamant in his position about that. "If you fucking put that on the film, I'm off." Another big issue between Boyle and Garland was the antagonist played by Mark Strong, Pinbacker, captain of the Icarus Wars. This one, though, became an issue for the audience as well. One of the major complaints about Sunshine is how the movie seems to suddenly shift genres as it enters the third act. With Pinbacker's arrival, it becomes a sort of monster movie instead of a more contemplative sci-fi thriller. There are some who love it, there are some who hate it, and there are some who just take the movie as it comes. But the change in the atmosphere is palpable, and the movie feels off balance once he shows up. After years of being marooned in the sun's orbit, and with no protection from the sunlight, Pinbacker became a madman and an almost literal monster, claiming to have had conversations with God about humanity and its fate. Pinbacker being in the movie at all feels like a sort of compromise between Boyle and Garland's diverging visions for Sunshine. He is a kind of vessel for all the philosophical issues that Garland wanted to raise, while also giving the story the clear ending Boyle wanted. Accomplishing the mission suddenly becomes synonymous with defeating the monster, as he hunts down the Icarus II crew members one by one and jeopardizes the whole thing. In the end, the movie gets its closed ending thanks to him being there, whether that was the intention or not. It just goes to show the power and importance of the collaborative process in filmmaking. Perhaps if Boyle and Garland were of the same mind from the start, Sunshine could have become something of a modern take on Solaris, but alas, it wasn't meant to be.